yeah, this bike's amazing. So much fun. Amazing weather, end of October. Can't ask for more.
What's up everyone, welcome to another episode. Today might actually be the most exciting bike build that I've ever done so far, and it is going to be about this beautiful Standert Triebwerk, which is a modern steel frame, and what makes it very special is that all the cables are going to be integrated. So I think once we're done, this is supposed to be a very clean, modern looking bike made out of steel. So something that I think we all love. So let's get started. So let's start in the front. Let's start with the handlebars, and to do that we also need to cut the fork to length. So this is going to be our first step. Just to talk a little bit about what comes in the package. Of course, all the bearings come in the package with the frame as well. And the special thing about this is, as this is a fully integrated frame, it also comes with Standert's own headset for integrated routing. So once you basically put in this little piece here, you have the top cover of the headset. It has a little rubber piece here at the front, which allows you to route all your cables that you have through through the head tube. The cool thing about this is that you don't need to use any kind of proprietary stem for this, because you can pretty much route your cables still the old school way and just mount them underneath the stem of your choice, and then just put them through this little rubber isolating cover here, which is pretty much supposed to be there to keep moisture out, into the head tube. So if you put this on here, let me get you a little closer. So as you see, it very nicely integrates here. You have this little rubber cap here in the front, and it allows you to now take your favorite stem, place it here on top. You would basically just route the cables along this line and then put them into through this little rubber piece into the head tube. But what I still had flying around was my old integrated handlebar from my original Derailleur R12, which you might remember from this build. And on my R12 I replaced it with the classical stem handlebar combo, so I still had this nice integrated handlebar flying around. So I spoke with my friends from Derailleur if it wouldn't be possible to make that combination compatible with this setup, and finally it turns out that it is. So they supported me this little cover cap here as well as the inlay. So what pretty much happens now, I can put this insert here, put the cover cap on top. So now if you look at this, I'll be actually able to mount this integrated handlebar on here and have all the cables completely hidden inside the handlebar and then going directly into the head tube. So at least that is the idea right now. Let's see if it's going to work out that way, but I hope so. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do now is actually to quickly assemble the fork into here, into the head tube, and then measure out at what length we'll actually have to cut the fork. So let's do that real quick. So for that, I already have the bearing mounted on the fork. So this goes through here. We push it all the way through. Then we're gonna add the headset cover cap, put it into the right place, and now we're gonna put the handlebar on top. So now let me quickly mark at where we're at here at the very top, and then we'll have to subtract a little bit to the position where we want to cut the fork. I also need to make sure that I don't want any spacers in between, but I would say for the looks I'm not going to put any spacers in between. I'm just using a little screwdriver to basically mark a little line for orientation. So let's see if I take the fork off. Yes, you can clearly, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I can definitely see a very clear line. So now that we know where we want to cut our fork, or what actually the fork height was, where we marked it at the moment, Then on top of that, we of course gonna have that extender plug, which also has a little bit of thickness, I would say like 2 millimeters. And then of course we need a little bit of space for the compression to happen. So we don't want this to be at the very top end of where the handlebar is. So I'm gonna now just quickly measure, I would say 5 to 6 millimeters lower of where this line is. Gonna put a little bit of isolation tape around it so I know where to cut it, and then I'll see you outside with the hacksaw. All right, as you might have noticed, we're outside now with the fork. So I placed the cutter slightly underneath the line that you see, yeah, to compensate for that extra plug and that extra space that we need there for compression. I like to put some moisture, so basically just a wet towel around the area where I'm going to cut it, so that the water is going to bind the carbon flakes and the carbon dust. And then also wearing a mask is not going to hurt. So let's quickly cut it. I know that you're supposed to cut normally in between that slit, but unfortunately this carbon blade doesn't really fit in there. So I'm just cutting basically using the outer edge of yeah, this little cutting guiding tool as a guide. Yeah. So let's cut. Alright, so let's quickly clean this up a bit. And what we're going to do now is use a little bit of sandpaper to smoothen out all the edges. But let's first get that tape off all the edges and the cut. Same from the inside. All right, that's looking pretty good. No sharp edges, no carbon fibers sticking out. So I think we're good to go. Let's go back inside. Okay, now that the fork is cut to length, it is time for the handlebars. So we're going to be attaching the shifters, but mainly we're going to be taking care about, yeah, getting all the cables nicely routed through the handlebar. Luckily, I'm going to be setting this one up with Shimano Di2 system, so it should be definitely easier than running a fully mechanical setup, but we still have to get those Di2 cables through here, as well as, of course, the hydraulic hoses for the disc brakes. So I would say let's get right into it. All right, so let's get started. There is this bar and plug style Di2 box, basically that one junction box, I think it's called. And this is also where you're charging the whole system. This is going to go into this bar end. Then you see there's this little hole here in the handlebar, which is actually making it Di2 compatible. So what we're going to do now is we're going to push this cable through here, attach it to the Di2 box, push it in here for now. There's going to be a nice finishing piece of plastic there as well, so we're going to attach that in a second. And then this cable is going to be routed on the outside of the handlebar and then going there into the shifter. Shouldn't be really much of a problem. You shouldn't really be feeling it because it is on the outside and your hands are rather on the inside anyway, so you shouldn't be really feeling that little bump underneath the bar tape. So now with that in place, we're going to take another Di2 cable, and the plan is here to connect the right shifter to the left shifter in between those, so that those two are connected. And then we're going to have another Di2 cable, which is then going to go from one of these shifters out from the handlebar into the head tube and then into the frame to the rest of the Di2 components. So now let's first route this one through here. For this, I'm having this little magnetic routing kit, a nice AliExpress purchase for a couple euros, which has one magnetic end, as you see here, and then the other side has yeah, different end parts, either for hydraulic hoses or in this case for Di2 cables. So I can basically just plug in that Di2 cable in here, and now I'll be able to pull it through the handlebars. So let's first route this piece of wire through here with the help of this magnetic guiding tool. There we go. All the way through. There's this fine piece which is there to basically just go into the handlebars or into the frame, depending on what they're setting up to fish it out. There we go. And now we can pull the whole thing through. As easy as that. So that cable's routed. So now we're going to take the third Di2 cable, and this is basically going to be routed through this hole because it's going to go into the frame and then to one of the shifters. And that should be good enough to actually connect both shifters to the rest of the system. And we route it all the way through here. There we go. Just like that. Click it in and then pull it through. That's it when it comes to Di2 cable routing. Pretty easy. So now we're going to do the same thing with brake hose cables. So these are the classical Shimano, what is it, SMBH90. One for the front, one for the rear. They're exactly the same, just different lengths. So let me professionally unbox them. So this is the shorter one, so this obviously goes to the left-hand one because we're in Europe, and the left-hand one corresponds with the front brake, so it doesn't obviously need that much hose length. All right, so with the hose we do exactly the same thing. There's just another tip for this, which also just easily screws into the hose. And there we go. And now we can pull it this way. Push and pull a little bit to navigate the hose through the handlebar, as it is more rigid than the cable and a little stiffer. There we go. But here it is already. We can unscrew the guiding cable and now we're good. So now we're just quickly going to do the same thing for the rear brake hose. Here we go. So that's also done. So that routing was actually quite smooth. So I'd say let's quickly now attach the shifters, position them roughly, even them out, and then yeah, then I think we can already put it onto the frame, guide all the cables through through the frame, and yeah, keep building. All right, so I've done one thing. So I've done one thing which was a little bit stupid, and it was attaching this already before attaching the shifter, because of course if I now want to push this through, this cable is going to be in the way. Luckily this is the easiest to install cable of all of them. So let me quickly pull this out first, and then let me push through the shifter. And there we go. Let's now tighten that screw just a little bit, that it's not fluffing around like that. All right. The good thing is that now, if you're mounting your shifters to your handlebar without the bike being installed, with actually the handlebar being flat on your floor, it's very easy to adjust the height of the shifters to be equal, because you just look out for that nothing is wobbling around, that they're pretty much the same height. You just need to look out for at what angle you want them to be, if you want them rather facing inwards, like it's trendy at the moment, or if you rather want them straight. That's how I like them, like this, just to be in line with the line of the handlebar. So I think something like this looks good. Nothing is wobbling around. This one could go a little bit lower. There we go. I'm just going to roughly tighten them so that they don't move around anymore. All right. So I was also mentioning that there is this finishing kit, or this finishing part that normally comes with this junction box. Normally it has double-sided tape on the inside, which makes it very easy to install. But this one I think has been assembled and disassembled already 3 times by now. So I kind of have to work with some nice electrical tape. So let me quickly also attach this. So this one goes around here. This goes around here. And we push it into the bar end. That looks good. And now we take some electrical tape and we tighten it up a bit. All right, so I've made a mistake. So I just tried to assemble the fork and the handlebars and get all the cables through and all the hoses through, which was super nice to have everything already assembled in your handlebar. But trying to push the hose for the front brake through the fork wasn't really possible, because this fork somehow is designed in a way that it has a hole where the hose needs to go into, and it needs to pop out here. Now we see this hose coming through. But normally the forks that I know, they have kind of a shaped tunnel in here that goes directly from this opening to this opening. But with this fork, it seems that there is a little bit of a Wild West going on here from this opening. So it isn't really sticking the cable through and pushing it through and then it naturally pops out here. You have to fish a little bit. So the easiest way for me now was to actually pull that hose out of the handlebar again. So luckily I didn't attach it yet to the shifters, and then push it through from the bottom, and then it's gonna pop out obviously somewhere here, and then yeah, just trying to fish it out with a little bit of with a key or with a little bit of brake wire, and yeah, that worked. So now we yeah, we have the front brake hose nicely installed in the fork, and we'll be able to now push it easily through here. But once we got the handlebars on, we'll have to yeah, to navigate that back into place through the handlebars. But as you've seen, it was quite simple actually while on the floor, so I hope that it's only this one hose that we need to do while everything is basically here on the stand. So it might be a little bit more fiddly than on the floor, but I think it should actually work quite well. So before we mount everything, we already have the bearing in here. Now we need to add this little yeah, I don't know, cable protector stabilizer for the fork in here. Let's make sure that everything is nicely aligned. Then also very important, already put on the finishing cap, because otherwise, once you have all the cables through there and you realize that you didn't put this thing through, which is nothing that you can break in half, and then you have to redo everything again, because obviously all the cables need to go through here. So let me attach that as well. That's looking good right here. So now I'm going to be pushing through the brake hose from the bottom. All right, and now we're good. That is in place. It's also kind of holding on just by pressure. That's going to make things easier now with routing the rest of the cables into yeah, into the system. Yeah, so of course, using a magnetic routing tool with a steel frame, not gonna work. All right, so without the routing tool, let's see how we're gonna get all these hoses into the places that they need to go. I'm taking the fork out just to feel it and guide it down the down tube. Okay. Yeah, not so easy. All by myself. Wow, what a mess. All right, so somehow, with lots of swearing, I managed to push everything through, somehow. So it is the time to now route this front brake hose back through the handlebar, and then we can finally attach the handlebar to the fork. So let me add my magnetic routing tool again, and let's route it through here to the left-hand side. There it is. All right, there is the brake hose. It is done. Let's unscrew the routing tool, drop it off on the floor for now. And now the big moment, we're gonna be putting everything together. Carbon assembly paste, whatever you want to call it. Just a little bit. Attach it here. A little bit on the inside here as well. All right. Wow, that looks good. Quite a mission. I would say. So now, let me quickly add the expander plug, and then we can put the top cover on, and then at least this is going to be stable, nothing's going to fall apart, and we should be good to move on to the next exciting part of this bike. All right, so I'm going to take this little expander plug that actually came with the Yoleo bike. I kind of like this a little bit more because it has more, yeah, a more grippy texture to it. So let me slot that in. Okay, that should be good. And then let me add a top cap to compress everything down. And then, yeah, as I said, we're gonna be good to go. For the top cap, I'm using this one-piece design. Actually, it says maximum 5 Newton meters. It is a 50% weight saving, so I think this one is, I just weighted 7 grams, while the regular setup with the screw and the regular top cap is around 15, 16 grams. So, I mean, you're definitely gonna feel that big time out on rides. So, let me attach this one and let's compress everything down. That looks beautiful. So now after that, let's continue routing the rear brake hose cable, yeah, to get it to its end point, and then we're going to do the same thing with the Di2 cable for the rear derailleur. So yeah, that pretty much all the wiring and cabling is done. So let's continue. So yeah, while I can't actually be using my magnetic routing tool because it is a steel frame, I'm still gonna be able to, or I'm still gonna try to use this little wire thing to actually get the rear brake hose out at yeah, this connector port back here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually just gonna push this cable through and hope that it's gonna come out here around the bottom bracket area. Now it's popped out. So now I can take the brake hose and attach the cable end to it. And while we're here, let's not forget to put a nice end cap onto this hole before we attach the actual brakes. Yeah, because once we did it, it's gonna be very tricky to do that again. So. All right, that looks good. Then we're gonna do a similar thing here. Here I'm already gonna put the little cover in first, as it's only gonna be a Di2 cable that goes into here. And so we're using one with a big hole, and then actually afterwards one of those little rubber pieces is gonna close that hole off. That's looking good. Nice. There we go. Nice. Done. Okay, let's assemble the rest of the Di2 setup. So let's do this one next, which is going to be for the front derailleur. First, I'm just going to add in that little cover plate here. And now this cable is going to be for the front derailleur. So we're just going to pop it in here, and it's right away going to come out of the bottom bracket area. Get that in here for now. Fantastic. Then we have this little junction box here, like kind of a splitter where all the cables come together, which I wrapped in a little bit of foam so it doesn't rattle around in the tube. So I'm just going to attach all the cables which are coming out here into this. So now here all the cables are coming nicely together into this little, into this little junction box, like this little splitter. And yet the only one that's missing now is the one from the battery, but this one's going to come rather later in the build process, as it's going to be mounted in the seat post, so basically going to come down here. So now let's continue with the front and rear derailleurs. For this I'm going to be using this carbon front derailleur clamp, which is half the weight of a regular front derailleur clamp. So this is 7 grams compared to 15 grams for the regular Shimano one. Let's see, I hope it's not going to break while putting it on. So worst case, we'll just go back to the regular one. So let's give it a try. Okay, so this one basically just bends open and then wraps around it. So wrapping it around. Okay, that's actually looking good. I think when it's compressed here, it should hold on quite tightly, so that's nice. So we can position that once we have the cranks in to basically adjust it to the right height. But now we can just attach the front derailleur, at least roughly to it, and then we move forward to the rear derailleur. For the front derailleur, we're obviously going to be attaching this here. Then for the screw, normally the screw has this little this little cap here, which is there for the bend to basically wrap around this part in a regular setup. But as this front part is flat already, we're gonna get rid of this and just use the screw. So let's go in here, fiddle the screw through, finger tight, so that we can still move it up and down once we put the bottom bracket in and assemble the crankset, and we know what height we actually need this. So let's move on to the rear derailleur. As always, add a little bit of grease in here, and then we can assemble the rear derailleur. Let's tighten it. All right, rear derailleur done. So now, with the rear derailleur being in place already, we can now take that Di2 cable and already connect it up to the port where it needs to go. Done. And pretty much same story with the front derailleur cable. To be able to now put in the bottom bracket, I actually need to finish up the whole Di2 wiring setup. And the last piece missing is the battery. So I'm quickly gonna pop in the battery into the seat post, route the wire down, and that will help us or allow us to actually put this junction box, which is sitting here in the bottom bracket area, up into the down tube or the C tube, wherever it's gonna fit, and then we can put in the bottom bracket and yeah, move on. So normally for the battery to actually be positioned in the seat post and to not move around too much, there are those rubber parts that you basically put around it, and then you basically just force the battery into the seat post. I don't have that at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of bubble wrap, wrap this around, and hopefully with that create enough diameter to actually keep it sitting well in the seat post. This is also, by the way, not the final seat post. This is just a seat post that I just mounted here that so that I can clamp it. We're gonna have a nice, very nice seat post coming up later. So let me quickly mount this. That looks quite good. Good enough, I would say. So now I'm going to drop in this Di2 battery cable into the seat tube. The seat post back on. All right. And now the only thing that is missing, I need to fish out that cable through here. There it is. Fantastic. So now we have this one remaining port on the junction box. This is actually there for the battery. There you go. Got that click. And now I'm going to try to push all of this in here. So now what we can quickly do is actually activate one of those shifters and see if the derailleur moves. Rear derailleur moves. Front derailleur moving as well. So everything is nicely wired up, because what you want to avoid is putting everything together and then figuring out that some connection is loose and you're not able to shift. So yeah, the bike actually comes with a nice T47 bottom bracket from Standert. So now we're gonna grease up the threads nicely, and then yeah, we're gonna install the bottom bracket. Grease up the threads, same thing from the other side. So now if we want to assemble this, there are clear instructions actually on the bottom bracket itself. This one's going to say drive, so this cup is going on the drive side, so actually this side that we're looking at now, and the other side says non-drive, so it goes on the non-drive side, so the other side of the bike. Also here you get the torque specifications on how tightly you need to actually torque up that bottom bracket, and yeah, 35 to 45 Newton meters just means really tight. So let's do this. So we need to push this cup through, basically through this bottom bracket part here, and we still have the cable from the rear brake hose going through here, which we can't really avoid. I mean, it needs to pass by here, which is also why we have this little space here, but we at least once need to push this through into place. Okay, there we go. So to mount the bottom bracket, it's very helpful to have one of those tools, because here the bottom bracket basically just locks nicely in, and it's very easy to screw it in. It also allows you to attach a torque wrench to it, but as it is metal on metal, there is a risk that you're going to be scratching your bottom bracket with the adapter. So what I like to do is take a piece of plastic, put it on top of the bottom bracket, and then just push it into the tool. And now you have a nice protective layer in between the metal of the tool and the bottom bracket itself, which should help avoid any bigger scratches. So now let's try if we can screw this in easily here. What you're looking for is a very easy way of threading it in. You don't want to be cross-threading anything. So if you're feeling there's too much resistance on here, you might be cross-threading it, so then it's better to back off, try it again, because especially on a new bike, this should be a pretty straightforward process. This is all the way in now. We're gonna do the final touches with the torque wrench. All right, so now we're gonna do the very same thing on the non-drive side. The only thing we gotta watch out for, we have this plastic inner cup here, so we'll have to be pushing it up a little bit so that it's centered. We'll do this from the other side of the bottom bracket, that it slides nicely into the bottom bracket cup. So hopefully it's gonna be as easy as I'm just describing. So let's see if we can get this started without the tool. I mean, pushing that cup in isn't as easy as I would have hoped for. Okay, I think that looks good. Let's put the tool on. And let's see if we can, yes. That feels now, it's going in quite smoothly. All right, that's all the way in. Rest we do with the torque wrench. So as it turns out, I borrowed my torque wrench to somebody and didn't get it back yet. But that's not gonna hold us back because we don't necessarily need it for the bottom bracket because that torque value, 35 to 45 Newton meters, as I said, just means very, very tight. So what I'm actually doing now, I'm just using that adapter that you've seen already and just a regular tool without any torque adjustment, assembling those. And just quickly gonna use that to tighten it up really, really tight. Now that we have the bottom bracket in, let's quickly assemble the crankset. This is going to be very straightforward. You basically just pop it through the bottom bracket. That's pretty much it. There you go. All right, it's actually not just as simple. You still need to attach the other crank arm. So this goes basically 180 degrees offset to the other crank arm. Then you have this little compression plug that comes with it, which basically just pushes this crank arm onto the spindle. Normally I was tightening them up way too tight, but yeah, some nice viewers actually made me aware that it's just supposed to go finger tight, so which is why I'm not even using the tool. I'm just basically putting my finger in here and now tightening it up. That should be fine. Then there's this little lock pin which we need to push down. This is there that in case your bolts turn loose, the compression plug falls out, whatever, this is preventing from actually that crank falling off the spindle. And now we're going to torque up those two bolts. I'm always torquing them up to around 12 Newton meters, which is also pretty tight. So make sure you're using a torque wrench here. Not going all the way just yet. That's 12 on this one. 12 on this one. Let's check this one again. Okay, and one more check on this one. Looking good. And it spins nice and freely. Very nice, this Standert bottom bracket. So now let's continue with installing the brakes. So let me just place it on top of here. This is going to be a pretty straightforward one. We also, of course, don't want to go super tight on these yet because we'll need to loosen those bolts anyways to center the brakes later on. Okay, let's move to the front. All right, so for the front brake, we have two different kind of screws. One is just a regular bolt, and the other one, it is pretty much the same bolt, but it has this kind of ratchety thing around it, which just locks into the hole on here on the mounting plate. And yeah, it prevents the bolt unscrewing itself potentially over time. So let's mount it. All right, so the top bolt without a ratchet, let's attach this one first. And then we take the bottom one with the ratchet, we put everything in place and screw it in as well. Now you hear the ratchet sound already. So same here as with the rear bolts, we don't necessarily need to tighten them to final specification because we'll need to move it around a little bit anyways to center it again. So now it is time to cut and mount all the brake hoses into place and yeah, get the braking system set up. Then we're gonna be bleeding it and then it's only gonna be down to finishing touches. So adjusting a couple of things, putting the handlebar tape on, and then hopefully we'll be able to take it out on a ride soon. So now let me quickly put the brake hose into place. But first of all, I quickly need to do a little bit of a cleanup because I just cut the brake hoses when I disassembled that group set from the previous bike, so they were still sticking out of the brakes and of the shifters, so let me quickly do that. Now we can get started. So to cut and to work with hydraulic hoses, you need a couple of special tools. I mean, with a couple, I mean two. First of all, something to nicely and cleanly cut the hoses. I'm using this little tool here from Jaguar, which is there for actually placing the hose basically in this opening, and then like a little guillotine pops through and gives you a nice clean cut. So after you've cut your end of the hose, you need to assemble a little metal pin into the hole, into the end point of your hose. And to do this, you can either do use a little hammer and a little tool that's clamping together the hose, which I guess also comes with a couple of hoses when you buy them. Well, I'm saying hoses a lot, huh? But I'm also using another tool from Jaguar, which clamps in the hose in this opening, and then with this little pivot helps you to drive the pin easily into place. Sounds quite weird, but I think it will be easier to understand once you see it. Alright, so now here we have the rear brake hose, which needs to be cut to length. It needs to go in here into this connector port of the rear brake. We have a little bit of leeway. We can push a little bit of the hose in, but we cannot pull more out. So I would say that we rather cut it a tiny bit too long and then push a little bit of it in than cutting it too short. So as always, measure twice, cut once. So I would say I cut it somewhere here. So let me take that measurement. Let me get the cutter into place. There we go. All right, so now we first need to place the nut on top of the hose in here. Then we're gonna place something that's called an olive on top of the hose. So this later on is gonna be, with this nut, gonna crush that little olive in the brake itself, and through that create an airtight seal for the oil, for no oil leaking out. And this thing here is this little pin that I was talking about. So this now needs to get pressed into the end of the brake hose. So for this, we're actually adding that pin into the end of the hose. Then we clamp it into our tool. Put the pin into place, clamp it, and then push the pin in. All right, now that's all the way in, can unclamp it, and we have a nice clean setup. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna stick the hose in here into the brake itself, move everything in, and here again, as with all threads, super important to make sure that we are not cross-threading anything. So first of all, we're just gonna go in finger tight. So as I said, what's happening now this nut is crushing that little metal olive in there. You'll feel at some point while you're screwing it in that you're gonna get a little bit more resistance, and that will be the moment when the crushing is starting. So now I'm getting a little bit more resistance, so you still need to keep threading it in so that that olive can get crushed and expand and create that airtight seal, so that that you don't have any oil leaking out here. Front brake next. All right, so here we do the exact same thing. We take our measurement, cut it. It is already quite close to where we need it to be. It's just a little bit too long, so we're gonna cut it somewhere here. Slotting everything in nicely, making sure that we're not cross-threading anything. So again, just finger tight at first. You can always check, trying to pull the cable out, nothing's moving. Looking good. Now we got to do pretty much exactly the same thing with the brake hose that goes into the handlebars. So same thing, measuring, cutting, and crushing that olive. So now we do the same thing as with the other setups. we add the nut first, which is a slightly different looking nut, but it comes with the shifters. So we add that one first. Then we add the olive. Gonna be good enough. And there's another thing that you need to watch out for, because here we're mounting a metal nut into a plastic shifter. So what can happen if you apply too much force, the shifter will crack. And I'm speaking out of experience. So while all the other connections have been metal on metal, it wasn't super important how tightly you're actually mounting it. Here I'm a little bit more cautious, I would say, so I'm waiting for that moment where I'm getting the resistance from the olive. Here it is, and then I'll give it a turn, maybe like half a turn and a little bit more, and that's it. So that's going to be good enough. At least previously it has been good enough. Nut first, and olive. All right, that should be good. So now it's time to do my favorite part of the bike build, and it is bleeding the hydraulic disc brake system. Let's go. All right, so before starting the bleed, we need to take out our disc brake pads. And for this, there is a little pin here at the back that needs to be removed before we take out that screw. And unfortunately, I don't know for what reason, I can't find my flathead screwdriver, which is, I know, quite an essential basic thing to have. But luckily, this Derailleur version of the Shimano system is actually compatible with a pretty standard vegetable peeler. So that should actually work to unscrew this screw here. All right. So take a note, Derailleur is compatible with standard vegetable peeler, so in case you're running out of flathead screwdrivers, you can go with that. So let me peel that out. Unfortunately, I don't have the regular brake block with me, but I have this one, which I think is for BMX bikes normally, but it also nicely fits in between the brake here. And that's what's most important, that there is some resistance. There we go. So that is done. So now we can prepare the port for bleeding. So for this, we need to take that little rubber protector off here. Now that this is out, we can attach our syringe filled with Shimano mineral oil. So let me just quickly get that ready. What you want to do is actually push out all the air that's sitting here at the top, so that you're not pushing any more air into the system. There you go. So let's move on to the shifters. So as we're bleeding the front brake, we need to do this via the left shifter. So if we're pulling back the hoods here, this exposes the bleed port on the shifter, and we need to unscrew it. It should be screwed in very lightly, just finger tight. I think it's like a 1 or 1.5 Newton meter specification for this one. I also already once actually messed up a thread by torquing it up too much, so trust me, it's totally fine when it's finger tight. Then once removed, we can attach this little container here at the top. All right, finger tight, open it up. And now we're going to open up the bleed port at the caliper and then start pushing through that fluid. So now over here, we're opening up that port by turning this little nut here counterclockwise. That should be good enough. And now we should be able to already push liquid into the system. So we just keep pushing, and we hope that at some point liquid's going to show up at the top. And we do actually see liquid popping out at the top. You see there are some bubbles, so we're pushing air out, which is exactly what we want. What we need to do, we need to keep pushing until we don't see any more air bubbles coming through. I like to pump the brakes a little bit and then keep pushing liquid through. You see there's still a bunch of air bubbles coming through. Now I'm pulling liquid back out. Just watching out that I don't pull out too much. If we don't see any more bubbles coming either way, and then we close the port again. All right. Then we can check the lever at the top, and we got some nice resistance here already. So I think the front brake should be good. All right, so now we can close this off. Then I'll actually remove the rest of the oil in here by pulling it up into the syringe. All right, now we can remove this. And we're gonna add that screw back in to close it off. Let's make sure that it's only, as I said, finger tight, 1 to 1.5 Newton meters. That's good enough. And then we can clean off any excess oil that might be around here after we put that screw in. So I would say front brake done. Let's now do the very same thing for the rear. Now we do the same thing in reverse, just to bring back the brake pads. Slot them in with the screw. And add the security pin on the other side, and you're good to go. Same thing for the rear. Now it's time to finally put some wheels on that bike, and for that I got my trusty Elite wheels, drive wheels, 50mm deep section carbon wheels, and yeah, let's drop them on, and I think it will make it even more look like a bike finally. Two axle back, nice. Rear wheel also rubbing, but that is expected. So let's quickly center the brakes. I'm using one of my favorite spacer tools. This one is from Bursman. I made a video on that already. And how it works, you basically just put this on top of the disc and slide it in between the brake pads. Of course, you need to make sure that the brake is loose. Now I'm gonna go to the front and I'm gonna push down that brake, compress it, which should center it. So now I'm pressing down the brake and I'm gonna slowly tighten up those bolts. Let's take the spacer out and voila, no rubbing. And same thing for the front one. So now that that's done, next step's gonna be fitting the chain. I brought a nice, fresh, pre-hot waxed chain with me, which is why it's in this little bag. But before we fit the chain, we need to quickly adjust the height of the front derailleur with this clamp, because we didn't really tighten that yet. What we're looking for is we want around 2 millimeters, 2 to 3 millimeters between the top of the teeth and the bottom edge of this front derailleur blade, I would say. So we need to raise it a little bit. That looks good. We also want to make sure that the front derailleur cage is in parallel with the crank. So just quickly eyeballing that, but that is looking good. And it says maximum of 3 Newton meters actually on that front derailleur clamp. So I'm now going to set up my torque wrench to 2.7 just to be safe and tighten it up, making sure that it stays parallel. Okay, we're at 2.7. Fantastic. There you see, nice tight spacing between the front derailleur cage and the top teeth. All right, so now I'll fill in the chain. Let's make sure that it is the right way around. And that looks good. So let me guide it through here first. Still Still see some flakes of wax falling off. That's normal. As I said, it is a freshly waxed chain. So we're going to shorten it by 2 links. This way we're going to end up with a length like this. So it's going to give us a little bit of stretch here from the rear derailleur, and then we should be fine. So let me quickly break the chain. There we go. Pin out, get the 2 links off, and now let's give it a try. Adding a quick link here, also adding a quick link on that side, using the quick link tool to stretch it out and lock it in. There we go. And that should be solid now. So let's quickly check the indexing. Okay, let's do big ring first. Go down, down. That's doing good. Going up, 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 up. It's looking great. And we go down again. Also looking good. Let's see front ring, small ring, big ring. Okay, there is some small tuning I would need to do on switching from the small ring to the big ring, but I can do that afterwards. Time for some bar tape. I'm not the greatest at doing bar tape, so please excuse me if you're seeing any mistakes.
Over the top, down around the back, and around the front.
So now that we're here in the front, we quickly need to straighten the wheel and align the wheel to the handlebar so that everything's nice and straight. So it's good that we have this up front mount here, which helps to align things a little bit easier. That's looking good. So now let's tighten those handlebar bolts up. I'm tightening those now to 4.5 Newton meters for now. We can always go tighter later if we figure out that the handlebars are still moving. All right, so one more thing, I still need to tighten the clips for the STI, so the shifters, that they don't move around, because I remember that I only tightened them roughly, that they don't move around too much, but I think now they're in a good position. So let's tighten them. So while we still have the bike on the stand, I'm gonna now add my ultralight carbon bottle cages, which are, I think, 7 grams a piece, plus some titanium screws. And yeah, then we'll be able to drop it off the stand and swap out the seat post. And just to let you know already, for the seat post I purchased a Roval Alpinist carbon seat post, which is very, very light. I was thinking about going for the Darimo one for this build as well, but I was having some issues, as you know, with it on my other steel bike with the Darimo one. It just came back from the repair. As there isn't really a lot of space in the seat post of the Darimo one inside to fit the Di2 battery, I decided to actually go with this one just to be safe, even if it's going to be like, I don't know, 20 grams heavier or 30 grams heavier, but still quite a lightweight seat post. So yeah, but let's get back to the bottle cages. So let's remove those bolts here first. Oh, they're quite tight. So quick question to the group. Somebody recently told me that you shouldn't be undoing bolts with your torque wrench and that it's gonna bring your torque wrench out of alignment or out of calibration. I'm wondering, what are you thinking about this? Do you have any information about it? Because I so far thought that it's totally fine to use your torque wrench also to undo bolts, as long as those bolts are not tightened over the torque that torque wrench can actually do. So this one is going up to 20 Newton meters. So as long as I'm not trying to undo a bottom bracket, which is 40 Newton meters, I think it should be fine, like undoing these kind of bolts, or bolts of like a headset or a stem, which are mainly around like 5 to 6, 7 Newton meters. So yeah, I did a quick Google search. It looked like it will be fine, but as this comment came up recently, I just wanted to check with you. So maybe you have some insights that will be interesting here. So yeah, just drop it down in the comments if you have an opinion or some knowledge on that topic. Easy. Alright, so now for the seat post, I decided to actually leave the bike on the stand. I just moved it from grabbing onto the seat post to grabbing onto the top tube. It's actually not really grabbing onto it, it's just hanging in there. As this is a steel frame, this shouldn't really be a problem because it is a proper tube here and it's not actually being clamped together. But if you are having a carbon frame or an aluminum frame, never ever mount the frame on a stand like this grabbing to the top tube, because it is it is a very fragile part of especially a carbon and an aluminum frame. But with steel we should be fine. So now let's move forward to the seat post. Fantastic. And yeah, our Di2 battery fell out. It is here. It was supposed to be here, but it isn't. But luckily I can already see it in here, so it should be very easy to fish it out. And it was fairly easy to fish it out. So yeah, we just need to make sure that we're not unplugging any cables here. This cable is, I gotta say, a little bit on the short side, but it is gonna work. Best case, if you're building a bike freshly up and you're buying a Di2 setup, make sure that maybe this cable towards the battery is at least 15 centimeters longer so that you can have it hanging out of here. All right, so first up, I'm gonna apply a little bit of carbon grip paste to the carbon seat post. And then I remember I said previously that I didn't have one of those rubber things. I actually found one of those rubber sets that you basically just wrap around the battery and then slide it into the seat post. And as it is slightly wider but compressible material, it is gonna stick properly in in that seat post. All right. Say half a centimeter lower. Okay, looking good. So now I'm going to be tightening that screw to 4 Newton meters. It should be on the lower end of what you should be using. Okay, that is 4. We got the click. So I hope that that's going to stay. Worst case, we can always adjust it and go up in like half Newton meter steps. Okay, so as you see, this saddle is tilted way too far forward. So for this, we need to undo that bolt in the front, get it moving backwards, even it out. Okay. All right, so I think with that, I would say the bike is pretty much ready. I just need to put some pedals on and then we can do a test ride. But before all that, I'm going to take it off the stand, so we're actually going to weigh it just to see how light or how heavy it actually is. I expect it to be not very close to my 7 kilogram steel bike, or actually sub 7 kilogram steel bike now, because it is a disc brake frame. It has a bunch of heavier components on it, and but yeah, let's find out. Reset the scale, 0 kilograms. Let's lift it up. Let's grab it in the center somewhere. Nice. 7.9 kilograms. Actually, way better than I thought it would have been. So I think 7.9 kilograms is actually quite great for a steel bike with disc brakes. But if you're interested in how light you can potentially get a steel bike, have a look at this video where I built actually an old retro frame up, and it is now below 7 kilograms. So yeah, check it out if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Next up, let's do a test ride.
So this bike is amazing. It pretty much rides itself. Feels super stiff, not twitchy at all. Yeah, I mean, I'm just here to steer it. And combination with that Yoleo one-piece handlebar, I think it looks great, feels solid. So yeah, I'm very happy about that.
So yeah, second ride out, and I have to say it's so much fun on this bike. It feels super agile, also with those wheels. I think really great combination. I'm very happy how it turned out with that Yoleo integrated handlebar and stem. The bike just looks great in the sun as well, with this slightly metallic blue. Very beautiful. And yeah, I think this is my one of my favorite bikes at the moment. I mean, aside from the Klein Concept #1, the sub 7 kilo steel one, that's definitely my favorite rim brake bike and maybe my favorite bike in general. But very closely after this, yeah, is this beautiful Triebwerk. And I mean, just look at it. I mean, it's just beautiful with no cables floating around, while being a nice, beautiful steel bike that you can really rely on. So yeah, big thumbs up for me, loving it. So let's keep riding. So let's quickly talk about the specs of this frame. So it is obviously a steel frame, I guess mainly made out of Columbus Life steel. It weighs around 1,830 grams for a size 56, so which is the size that I'm building up here, or I have built up here. It comes with a standard bottom bracket, which is a nice T47, which is great. It also comes with an original Columbus fork, the Futura version. That one, uncut, is around 440 grams, based on their specification. And yeah, maybe tire clearance is interesting as well. So tire clearance officially is up to 32 millimeters. Unofficially, I think you can squeeze in another like 2 to 3 millimeters in there if you want to push it a little bit. So overall, you see, I mean, being a steel frame, it's not the lightest one with around 1,830 grams, but after the build, you also see that with the right components, you can definitely get it to a very competitive weight. And I think there's still some room for improvement and yeah, more potential to save a couple of grams more here and there. And yeah, overall, independent of the weight, it is such a fun bike to ride, I have to say. I've been out with it now 3 or 4 times already, and I really love it. It's really motivating somehow to ride it, so I really enjoy it. So yeah, those are the tech specs of the frame. So I hope you enjoyed this little video around the Standert Triebwerk fully integrated frame build and yeah, first ride impressions. So yeah, if you enjoyed that video, don't forget to hit that like button. If you have any questions in regards to the frame, or if new ideas, or yeah, you have some remarks in regards to some of my methods, how I'm assembling my bike, maybe there's some room for improvement here and there. I know there is. Yeah, let me know in the comments, please. And yeah, if you're not subscribed yet, consider subscribing, because I see that over 80% of people that are watching my videos are not subscribed. So yeah, I would love to welcome you to yeah, to my channel more often. So with that, thanks a lot as always for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.